Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Carlette Christmas, and this is OnPoint Talk, the official OPT network. Our website, that's www.onpointtalk.com. This morning, we're talking about every parent's worst nightmare, the one that we believe happens only to someone else. We're talking about drug overdose. Stay on point. We'll have that conversation right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT network. This morning, we're joined by two parents that are celebrating the life of their daughter. Many of you will remember Jakelynn Ammons and her death. It was widely reported that she had died from a drug overdose of Carfentanil. Well, this morning we're talking about Jakelynn's life, and we're hoping that her life and her death will give power to parents and young people to make better decisions. This morning, we welcome to the OPT network for the very first time, Melissa and Peter Socia. Melissa and Pete, thank you so much.
Glad to be here.
Let me just say, we can only imagine how hard this journey has been. Our kids went to elementary school together, and so we were familiar with Jaclyn, but I want you to tell people, Melissa, who Jaclyn was beyond what we know.
Jaclyn was such a loving person. She was so full of life. She was funny. She was just like the most outgoing personality of anybody you could ever meet. Anytime she met somebody, she always wanted to make that person feel special. She went out of her way to make everybody feel like you were the only one there with her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
she went to Phoenix.
She went to Phoenix. We moved here from Dallas in 2003, and we were zoned for Forest Hill, so we went there for kindergarten, but 1st through 6th, she went to Phoenix, then Brame, and then she went to Ash. And just real outgoing, real smart. I mean, she was always on her LEAP scores, they would be excelled everything. Mm-hmm. You know, one of those kids, if you don't keep them busy, they just get easily distracted. Mm-hmm. But she was just everything, honors, excelled at everything. And whenever she got to college, she said, I'm a nurse. And she said, Mama, I'm never going to be a nurse. And then, they give them those tests that tell what they would be. And she said, Mama, you are never going to guess what that test told me. And I said, a therapist or a nurse? And she said, exactly. But mm-hmm. she was that spirit of counsel mm-hmm. for her friends, for all those. She was always that person that people came to mm-hmm. to talk about what was going on in their life. Mm-hmm. But just a real...
she was a light.
Oh, yeah.
And for you, Pete, how do you best remember Jaclyn?
Well, she was just a ball of life. Just
mm-hmm.
any room she walked into, she was lighted up like the sun was shining in there. Mm-hmm. Just a special kid.
So tell me about graduation and, when we all sent our kids, from graduation, they all decided to go to college, and she decided to go to Lafayette.
She decided to go to, she checked some schools. She decided she wanted to go to Lafayette because it was big, it was large enough to feel like she was not at a little small campus, but still small enough to feel like a hometown, mm-hmm. That, and close enough where she could come home. She really wanted to, still
be
close enough. Mm-hmm. So she decided she was going to be a nurse, anesthetist, because I told her, I said, well, whatever field you choose, make sure you choose one that's going to support your lifestyle. She liked nice things, and I told her, you're not living here for forever, so you need to make sure you choose something that is going to support that. So she chose to be a nurse anesthetist, and she was doing so good. She was on the president's list. She had a 3.9 average in school. Mm-hmm. She told me when she first got into college that she was going to get into a sorority, and I told her, I said, well, I don't know if that's the best bet for you. Why don't you just try to focus on school? So when she went, she said, well, Mom, I'm going to be very particular about the one I choose. I'm not just going to get in any group. So when she went, she told me that she didn't get the one that she particularly wanted, but she said, I did find a group. And I said, well, who is it? And she said, it's a life group.
Wow.
And they were like, it was a bunch of Christian girls that they met together, and they would like cook or just share things about their life, you know, and it was real. Like, we went down there, me and my mother, and we talked to them, and, you know, like they would start their group off with a prayer, and they said, today we're going to say what made us happy and what was crappy. And I said, isn't that funny? Because, you know, they're venting, so to speak, about what's happening in their life, and not just the good things, but the things that, you know, they were very open with each other. So I was like, well, isn't that a nice little group? But I also found many notebooks where they would study the Bible, and they would have how those verses applied to things that were happening in their life. So, I mean, you know, I was so happy as a parent to think, man, here she is in college, and now she didn't find some little trouble group. She was actually
She found a Christian group.
On the right path. And I was like, praise God that, you know, she was falling in with the right people, because, you know, you're so concerned when your child goes off to college, because, you know, they haven't been away from home, and who are they going to be friends with, and what's going to happen in their life. And, you know, it's concerning.
So when you and Pete come together, Pete, y'all are talking about her life, and you feel good about everything. No concerns, really?
No, ma'am. She was, like I said, she was a joy. Now, me and her bumped heads a little bit.
She wouldn't be a teenager if she didn't. Yeah. But so life was going along well.
Oh, yeah.
And both of you a nurse, Melissa, and Pete, you a firefighter. So you understand what's happening in the world, especially with drugs. And Pete, I'm sure you've gone out to many scenes where life was just tragically gone within seconds. And so you don't ever expect that that's going to happen in your family. And so she is going along, she's at school, all is well. Is there any reason for any concern?
No, whenever I worked every other weekend, and she would come home every other weekend. And this particular day that she came home, it was on a Friday. She had just got in, and it was around the Christmas holiday. So they were finishing up, and she came in, and she was helping me around the house, and her brother was there, her stepbrother, and
was she any signs of stress that, you know, from testing and school?
I know that she just really put a lot into her grades. She was really like obsessed with, she had to have good grades. So I know there was some stress there over that. But I mean, she had a part-time job, but her job, she just worked, you know, whenever she had time. So other than that, though, school was like, her whole world was focused around that.
And so,
but nothing outward that
and nothing that she ever came to you and that she shared with you guys, or, you know, with mom, that she was concerned about, or no
never
indication.
Said, I mean, she did say something like a week before. She had told me, she said, Mama, what would you do if I died? And I thought, sit down for a minute. And I said, is there something that we need to talk about? And
just
she
out
said,
of the clear
just
blue.
out of the clear blue. And I said, well, that's kind of odd, something to ask me. And she said, what would you do if I died? And I said, what kind of caught me off guard? And I said, well, I don't know, but I hope I would never have to figure that out. But she
Did y'all kind of just leave it there?
Yeah. She said, oh, you'd be fine. You're strong. And I said, well, I hope I'd never have to figure that out.
Wow.
But I never in a million years thought, if you
did.
would have told me that something like that would have happened, I would have never believed that.
Wow. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the decisions that our young people make, and understanding that none of us are exempt from those decisions. Peter and Melissa Socia are our guests this morning. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guests this morning are Peter and Melissa Socia, and they're telling us about their journey and their loss. And we just can't thank them enough. We can't thank you enough for the courage and the heart that you have for others in sharing what must have been probably one of the hardest losses that any parents could ever imagine. So Jaclyn comes home from school for holiday, and she and her stepbrother decide to go out. Do you think anything of it?
No.
Neither of you?
No.
No, that was something they regularly did together. They was two peas in a pod. They loved each other. They fought like cats and dogs, but they loved each other, and that was nothing uncommon, for them to hang out whenever they was home together.
Sure. And so tell me about when they left that night.
Well, when they left, he was going through some struggles of his own, and I had gotten on to him, and she was going to comfort him.
She was going to fix it.
So she said, come on, I'm going to take you out. And they would go for ice cream or go just hang out. They have friends that are mutual friends, so they were going to go out. And I said, well, don't be too late. And she said, okay. Nothing abnormal. Mm-hmm.
So the night goes on, and everybody goes about their business.
That's right.
And so when do you know something's wrong?
5:47, my phone rings.
5:47 in the morning.
Yeah.
But so they've been out all night then?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we had already gone to bed, so we didn't realize
that they're out. You don't know if they're home or not.
Right.
And they're both adults.
Right.
And so 5:47, what happens, Pete?
We get a call. Phone rings at 5:47, and
do you automatically think something's wrong?
Well, yeah. As a professional fireman, when the call goes off at the station, the first thing I do is I go to counting my chickens. Where are all my kids? Where's my wife? Where's my family? So, and the lady on the other end of the line was frantic, and all she said was that something was wrong with Jaclyn, and they was working on her. The EMS was there, and they was working on her. So,
do you have any idea what she's talking about?
Well, somewhat, but I really didn't understand a lot of what she was trying to tell me. So we jumped up and got to town as quick as we could.
And so, in getting to town, what are you guys? What's it like on the ride? Do you instinctively know?
I just was in shock.
We did a lot of praying on the way to town.
I was in shock, thinking, not my baby. But something told me that she was not going to be okay.
Were you able to see her?
No, they wouldn't let me see her.
We could see her from a distance, but they wouldn't let us.
But they're working on her.
Yes.
And you as a firefighter, what are you thinking at that moment?
Well, from the time we left the house, time we got the call, and time we get to town, they're still working on her. Was not a good sight. It was not a good scene. And then it wasn't long after we get to town, then I see them start putting up the yellow crime scene tape. So immediately I know what that means. Not good.
I knew it took 20 minutes to get from our house to town, and me being a nurse, I've worked several codes, and in 20 minutes, if you don't get any response, the likelihood that they're coming back is not good. And even if they did, there would be brain damage or severe problems. So I knew.
At that moment, though,
but they would not even let me go over there at all.
With both of y'all being lifesavers, do you feel like I can save her? I can bring her back. If I would have been the one.
Well, you would like to think that, but being our profession, you pretty well know the likelihood of that is.
I think it wasn't not that I could save her, but it was more like I have to see it for myself. I mean, when somebody dies, it's like it's so surreal until you see them, until you put your hands on them, until you see their lifeless body there, then you go, "This is real. That's her." I can remember after she died, and they brought her. A friend of mine works at the funeral home. He's the mortician there. He's does everything. And he's been our family friend for forever. And I said, "Can I see her?" Because in my mind, it was like I never got to see her. Whenever they happened, they just told me she's gone. And I'm like, in my mind, I didn't see her. How do I know that was her? In your mind, you think it's got to be somebody else.
Right.
Can't be her. But whenever I went to the funeral home, and I saw her there, it was like someone had shot me with a shotgun, like instantly just I almost fainted. I just couldn't believe it. Because how could our daughter that was doing so good, that we didn't never know, we never saw any kind of signs, how could that be her? So
one of the things that sticks with me the most is, like I said, after I see them putting this tape up and taping off the area there, and then the officer comes over and says, sorry to inform you that your daughter didn't make it.
Oh my gosh. Make it. But your son, meanwhile, Zach, they're together. But he did make it.
He did.
So what does he say to you all in that moment?
I think he was
crying,
he was pretty much in
just,
shock.
Yeah.
Just crying and just very sobbing, just like a little child.
So do y'all need, though, for him to give you some answers in that moment?
Oh yeah.
But he's nowhere fit to give you the answers.
No.
The answers come the next morning when we set him down.
When everybody comes to reality that this is not a nightmare.
He gave us answers, but I don't know that his mind was clear enough to know. And I think part of him didn't want to be, he felt like he was in trouble, like, I'm fixing to be in trouble. So, what do? You don't tell the truth. So all that night, I was creating a timeline in my mind, like, how did this play out?
Right.
So we came back around and he said, okay, this is the story. Mm-hmm. But,
do you, if there is any comfort, do you find sort of at least maybe a peace about knowing that she didn't suffer, or did you feel like she suffered?
I don't feel like she did. I feel like it happened rather quickly, and she just stopped breathing. And she went into respiratory distress, and, her respirations got so weak that she just quit breathing. But, when I think about myself, I think about what about other people's families that their kids have gone through the same thing, that now they're on ventilators the rest of their life. Now they're in nursing homes and they're invalids. I was blessed in the fact that not my child's gone, but it could always be worse. I could be having a teenager child that
is in the nursing home.
Is there the rest of her life. She would have never, ever wanted to be like that.
Live in a vegetative state.
That's right. And what if I would have had to now, I have to go think about when's a good time to pull the plug? When's a good time how do I deal with this the rest of her life? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that, whenever there's tragedy and we're at our weakest, God's always at his strongest. And he always has a plan. And even though we wouldn't have believed that with our daughter, it really, what made me think of is how God loves us so much. He gave us his best. He gave us his son.
Yeah.
That was the only thing he had that was his most precious gift. And that really put things into perspective for me, because this was my only biological child. She was my perfect gift. And now he loves us that much. It really put that into perspective to me of how much he loves us. Because how many people do you know that would go and sacrifice their child for people that they know would never love them? Who would do that?
Only Jesus.
Only Jesus. How powerful is that? It humbled me to the fact where I just wanted to get on the ground, and I just wanted to praise God right then in that moment. And how can you even praise God in a moment when your child is gone? You don't have anything left, and you think, what do I have? I have the promise of God's salvation. That's what I have. I have God's promise. He's always going to bring us through, and he always has something. He can take something so ugly and make it beautiful. And I know that she was saved, and I know that I'm going to see her again. And I have a lot of faith, and and my strength of how I get through every day is knowing that. You know, they say this life is just that fast.
Yeah.
When we think we're struggling through life and life is just so hard to handle, this is not the life that we're meant to live.
No.
Our life is this next life that's coming, and she's going to be there.
That's right.
And I'm going to have eternity with her. So on days when I feel bad and I think, oh, I miss her so much, I just think, it's that fast. It's
Amen.
that fast, God. He's going to bring us home. We're all going to be together.
Amen. Let me get a break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. You know, this is one of those conversations that is so extremely hard to have, but it's so necessary. Our guests this morning are Peter and Melissa Socia, and we're talking about their family, and more importantly, the loss of their daughter, Jakelynn Ammons, at 18 years old. She died in January 28th, 2018. We're just talking about her life and what her life has meant and how, Peter, you know, and I guess Melissa, you too, more than anybody, drug overdoses have become rampant, not just in our communities, but across America. And what we know is that we teach our kids the best that we know how, teach them what we know, but we can't make their decisions. And so when you go back and you know that drugs were the cause of her death, she and her stepbrother were together, she dies, he lives. How do y'all then come back together as a family unit in your faith to say we won't let this rip us apart?
Yeah, that was one thing that we said right after this, that this could go two ways. It could tear us apart, or it's going to make us stronger. And we chose to make it stronger, let us make it stronger, and we just refused to let it tear us apart. That we stood on our faith and on the word that we know is the truth.
So are you able to forgive Zach for being there for whatever the situation was?
Well, you know, we feel
know.
like Zach was the big brother where we think maybe he should have said, no, we shouldn't do this. But you know, when you're out doing those sort of things, that's the farthest thing from your mind. They're just really wanting to have a good time. So
We know that he didn't maliciously try to hurt her. They were each other's best friend. They were partners in crime. He didn't go out saying, let me hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he took away his own best friend. Why would he do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was just thinking, hey, we're out having a good time. You know, when you're a kid, you don't ever think that could happen to you. You never think this could be something you never think, when I leave this house today, that I'm never coming back. No one ever thinks that.
No, you don't. And so how do you help Zach get over what must be survivor's guilt for him, that she died and I lived?
Well, I know Zach really struggled with this, you know, and it's really eating him up, and he's not wanting to talk about his feelings, and he's held them in, and just held them in to where it's just basically it's hard to sit back and watch your kid self-destruct and not knowing how to help them. But Zach's in a program now that's called Team Challenge, and he's got his life turned around and really doing well now. So I'm proud of him. But to go back to your question, you know, you just got to love them.
You just got to love him. So when you realize that this has been a drug overdose, the question now becomes, who did this? Who sold these children, these young people, the drugs? And ultimately, you find out who the person is, and that person is taken to trial. How do you as a family, as a couple, come together to sit through that trial?
It's tough. It's tough to have to listen to those things about your child that you think you know everything that's going on in their life. But whenever they're not around you, you hear things that they were doing that you were totally unaware of. And you think, that, oh, my child wouldn't do that. Or since they're making good grades, and usually when people are on drugs, you see an outward appearance. There are many signs that you see that would lead you to believe there's a problem. Well, there weren't those signs. Mm-hmm. And even with both of my children, we have sat and watched intervention. We have talked about drugs. We talked about each individual show that we watched. I mean, so you think, where did I go wrong? As a parent, you think, what didn't I do? What could I have done? How did I fail them? Was it something that I could have done? And I have replayed it back in my mind several times of, what didn't I do? What didn't I say? But the bottom line is kids will do things that you wouldn't think they would do when they're not around you.
Absolutely. And they're young adults.
That's right. They're not young kids.
Say it again, Pete.
Peer pressure is a strong, big thing out there amongst children or kids.
It is. And so now you're forced to sit through this trial with a girl that's not much older than your own children. How do you begin to process what will ultimately be her fate?
Well, we just, at that point, we realized that, like I was telling them in court, all things that we do in life have consequences. Every action that we take, good or bad, there's a consequence.
And so was Jaclyn.
And Jaclyn took a chance and put something in her body that she didn't know what it was. And her consequence was she died. I mean, that's the ultimate price. Now this girl has dealt some drugs that were bad, and now she has to pay a price. Now what that price is, that's not for us to judge her. That's for the judge to judge her and for God to judge her, because the bottom line is it doesn't matter if she gets no days. 40 years was the maximum sentence that she could have got. It didn't matter because it wasn't bringing our daughter back. It wasn't bringing her back.
Right.
So the fact that maybe she could save someone, we could save someone else because the product that she was putting out there wasn't out there anymore. But it doesn't matter when you take one off the street, 3 more pop up. It's about awareness and letting parents know that, when you think that your kids won't, your kids will. And one of the biggest abused drugs out there are prescription drugs. And whenever the law cracks down on prescription drugs, then now heroin is less, so less like the sentence used to be a life sentence. Now it's not. So there are more lenient sentences on heroin. So now it's harder to get the prescription drugs and easier to get the heroin. And a long time ago, you used to think heroin addicts were people that shot up drugs and all that, and it's not that anymore. Now it's a powder. I mean, evidently things have changed, and that what a kid might try, of course they're not going to try to inject themselves with drugs, but they might snort something.
Right.
And that's a lot more scary because, it can still cause death.
Right. And you would never be the wiser.
That's right.
And so, Pete, I think you said something so powerful. You said that you and Melissa have forgiven the young woman. When did y'all make that decision?
Well, throughout the whole trial, and like I said, we've done much praying through this whole ordeal, and still to this day. But it's like I said, I serve an all-powerful, mighty God that's a loving and forgiving God, and with my Christian faith, I also have to forgive. And that's tough to say when your child's in the ground.
Well, we know she didn't know she didn't know our daughter, and our daughter didn't know her. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like she sought her out to give her something mm-hmm. bad. It was just bad decisions made by everyone. But the bottom line is, it still caused a death. and I believe she's a young person too that, look back in life. There are plenty of us that have made bad decisions, and maybe we influenced someone, or maybe we said something negative that we don't even know how that influenced someone, just being ugly to someone, and then that lowered their self-esteem and made them do something that, look at people being bullied now and they commit suicide. I mean, you don't even know how powerful your words are, that things that we say to people, how that affects them. And for her, she's still young. She still has an opportunity to maybe change herself, that she could be a better parent and be, get her children back and have a nice life. But, we just want it to help someone, because there are many that are struggling with this. It's, if it helps one,
and it doesn't discriminate against anybody.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how educated, how uneducated, how poor, how rich. It is an issue that is running rampant in our society, and we can't thank you enough. And we don't even purport to know how broken and how hard it is to talk about such an incredibly hard subject. But we want this to be a celebration of Jaclyn's life and her memory, and we hope that every parent, every grandparent, every person who is raising a young person will be able to take away from this conversation that it does not discriminate. And thank you guys so much for trusting us to share your story. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This is my final point, on point today. This is probably one of the hardest conversations that I have had. Anytime parents lose a child and have to bury a child, it's a hard conversation to have, especially when you know that that could have been your child. And so many people after the fact will say, well, I know what mine is doing. They're just doing this, or they're just doing that. They would never touch this or that. And the real truth of the matter is, none of us know what our children will do or have done. The reason why we wanted to share this story is so that parents, tweens and teens can come together and we can start having the real open conversation about drug use. And we can say to our kids that you could make a decision in the moment that could change your life and your family's life forever. Last year, when our son came home and said that Jaclyn had passed, I said to him, this is something that we all need to face head on. Because we too, like every other parent, or many parents, I should say, we had some of the same issues of our child starting to dabble and experiment. And so that's why I can own it. And I can face the fact that it could have been my child or your child, but it happened to be their child. And so now what we have to figure out is, how do we begin to meet our young person and help them to understand that death is very real, and that when you trust someone that has maybe a 5th or 6th grade education at best to create a mixture that you would then take and put in your body, not knowing the effects, we have to say to our kids, you got to see how crazy that is and how uncertain that is. And so we can look at this family and we could say, well, yeah, that's them because of this, this, and this. But you know what? At the end of the day, as parents, we're all doing the very best that we can to raise our kids. And what we teach them is what we know. But when they leave us, we have no idea the decisions that they make. So what it will do is it'll keep us all on our knees in prayer, and it'll keep us hopefully having the conversation so that we don't have to talk about another teen that died too soon. And here's what we know for sure. We know that there is a demonic force at play that is working. The enemy's job is three things: to kill, steal, and destroy. It's working to snatch young people up before they even get started, because he knows that there is greatness destined for their lives. He knows that there is a place and a purpose for them on the planet, and he doesn't want to see that happen. And I would say to the parents of Jakelynn Ammons, to Melissa and Peter, your faith has been on full display this day. Their faith is what has brought them through. Their faith is what has made them say, you know what, this is what happened. But we want to make sure that another family doesn't have to sit in grief. And this is two lives, really, that have been lost. Jaclyn in heaven forever, and the young woman who sold the drugs. Her life forever changed. There is so much that we don't understand about all of these newfangled drugs that even if you get some of this debris onto your body, could take your life. So this morning, we hope that it will start the conversation of openness and honesty. And we hope that we don't have to talk about yet another person leaving this world before it's time. That's been my final point, on point today. Stay with us. We're back to wrap up right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. We can't thank Peter and Melissa enough for their courage, the courage to talk about living to fight another day, the courage to share their daughter's story to people who think, not my child would never. Well, here's the real raw truth. When our kids are away from us, we don't know what they will do. When they're with us, we don't know what they will do. But being a parent, being a grandparent, being someone who has a child, a teenager that you're raising, it will do one thing for sure, and that is keep us all on our knees. The message that we need to continue to resonate and send to every young person is just say no. I know it's cliche, but it's what has to happen so that we don't have to sit and talk about another death because of an accidental overdose. You know why we do it. It's simple. We love you. We love our kids. We love our community. We got to start loving ourselves. Mahatma Gandhi said it, and I say it every single day. Peter and Melissa are the change that they want to see. But it has to start with you and with me. The entire crew and team of OnPoint Talk Television, have a great and a safe day. God willing, we'll see you right back here next time.